So, Friedrich Nietzsche. That name alone, right? It just brings up these images of, I don't know, intellectual intensity, a lot of controversy. He's definitely one of philosophy's most challenging and, frankly, misunderstood thinkers. You don't just read his work, you kind of have to wrestle with it. And Beyond Good and Evil might just be his most powerful and perplexing attack on everything we think we know.
I mean, the guy himself wrote, "I am not a man, I am dynamite." And honestly, that's exactly what it feels like to read him. His ideas are literally designed to explode our most comfortable assumptions about truth, about morality, about our very selves.
So, yeah, how do you read dynamite? How do you even begin to approach a thinker whose whole goal isn't to convince you, but to challenge you right down to your very core? Well, that's what we're going to try and do here. Think of this as your user's guide to Nietzsche's, well, explosive philosophy. Okay, so first things first. To even begin to get Nietzsche, you have to realize the key isn't just what he's saying, but how he's saying it. He doesn't play by the usual philosophical rules, so before we can even dive into his ideas, we need to go over 3 essential warnings he basically gives to all of us, his readers. And this is the big one, the first and most crucial step. You have to stop treating him like a traditional philosopher. If you go in looking for these neat, logical arguments that build up to some tidy conclusion, you're going to be really frustrated. Nietzsche isn't trying to prove a point, he's trying to provoke a whole new way of seeing the world. Okay, so here are the 3 big warnings you got to keep in mind. First, these are his views, and he's not shy about it. He is not trying to be some impartial, objective observer. Second, do not expect any modesty. He makes these huge, sweeping statements on purpose, partly to show how much contempt he has for common sense. And third, he wants what he calls distance. He actually believes he's writing for a very rare kind of reader, a free spirit, and he doesn't want to be confused with us, his normal readers. This quote just sums it all up perfectly, doesn't it? What he's basically saying is, don't you dare try to fit me into your little box. Don't try to make my ideas fit neatly with yours. You have to meet me on my own terms or not at all.
All right, so now that we've got the rules of engagement down, we can start to explore the method behind his madness. His entire way of thinking is built on a single, powerful, and for him, a very dangerous word.
See, instead of building these careful, logical proofs like other philosophers, Nietzsche, he conducts thought experiments. He's way less interested in saying, this is how things are, and much more interested in asking, but what if we looked at things this way? Or even, hey, what if everything you've ever believed to be true just isn't?
And this right here, this is his call to arms. He's on the lookout for philosophers of the dangerous perhaps. For him, philosophy isn't about finding certainty, it's about having the guts to explore all the possibilities, especially the ones that make us uncomfortable. It's an act of pure, courageous exploration.
And all this what-if thinking leads us straight to maybe his most famous idea, perspectivism. Okay, so, put simply, it's the idea that there's no such thing as an absolute, objective view from nowhere. All knowledge, all truth is filtered through the perspective of the person doing the knowing, their psychology, their history, their body, everything. For Nietzsche, who is speaking is just as important as what is being said. And this chart, it shows the huge shift he's talking about perfectly. So on the left, you've got the traditional idea of objective truth, something universal, unchanging, totally context-free. Nietzsche just tosses that whole idea out the window. He argues for the model on the right, perspectival truth, which is always contextual, experiential, and tied to a specific point of view. It's not about one single truth, but many truths. Okay, so how does this whole perspectivism thing actually work in practice? Well, we can see it in action when he launches one of his most famous and, controversial thought experiments, when he turns that critical eye of his onto the very foundation of our values, morality itself. So he asks one of his classic what-if questions. What if our ideas of good and evil aren't some divine command or a universal law written into the fabric of the universe? What if they're just human inventions, born from the psychological perspective of very specific groups of people? This table right here lays out his super radical hypothesis. So let's look at the left column, master morality. He argues this came from the powerful, the noble. For them, good is just a reflection of themselves, being proud, powerful, noble. Bad is just the opposite, anything weak or pathetic. Now look to the right, slave morality. This, he says, comes from the oppressed, the weak, the suffering. Since their main experience is suffering, their idea of good becomes everything that makes suffering easier. Kindness, humility, patience. But here, and this is the really crucial twist,
Look at what they call evil. It's not just bad. Evil is the very nature of the masters themselves. Powerful, dangerous, and scary.
So you see, the big point here is he's not actually arguing that one is right and the other is wrong. He's using this whole thought experiment to completely blow up the idea that morality is something sacred or absolute. He wants to show that our most deeply held values are just human inventions, born from a certain perspective to serve a certain psychological need.
Okay, I know. This is some really heavy stuff, and it can all feel super abstract. So, why should we care? Why does this 19th century German philosopher, with that amazing mustache by the way, still have such a grip on us today?
Well, to really get his sense of urgency, you have to look at when he was living. This timeline shows he published Beyond Good and Evil in 1886, just a few short years before his tragic mental collapse. He was writing in a Europe where all the old certainties about God, about science, about politics were crumbling. His philosophy is a direct response to that crisis of meaning, a crisis that, you could argue, we're still dealing with today.
And that is the key to why he's still so relevant. His value today isn't about agreeing with his specific conclusions, which, let's be honest, can be deeply controversial. His value is in his method. He isn't here to give you answers. He's here to force you to ask better, much harder questions.
You know, the introduction to this very edition of his work just nails it. It says reading Nietzsche is like taking a mental tonic. It's like an intellectual workout designed to make you stronger at confronting your own doubts and questioning your own assumptions. So, what does this all mean for you? What's the big takeaway? Reading Nietzsche isn't just about learning about him. It's about learning to think more critically about yourself. As we've seen, he literally challenges the ground you're standing on, your common sense, your values, your truths. He forces you to face the idea that your perspective isn't the only one out there, and maybe, just maybe, it's not as solid as you think. Because in the end, Nietzsche's goal was never to give you answers. It was to make you challenge yours. He lights the fuse on the dynamite and just hands it to you. So the real question isn't what Nietzsche believed. It's, what are you going to do now? After this little glimpse into the abyss, what comfortable, long-held truth of your own are you going to dare to question first?